What's up, guys? We are back with another Masters of the Universe Masterverse review, taking a look at the other Netflix CGI figure in this particular wave. We're of course taking a look at Skeletor, and I mean, if they're going to go for two right out the gate, it has to be the main characters, and frankly, I really like this design for Skeletor. Just the overall look is incredibly evil and menacing. Still remains to be seen exactly how this figure is going to work, because let's be real, it's a weird design, especially when it comes to being a highly articulated toy. So I'm very curious to see what they're able to do here. Now, he does come in the standard style Masterverse packaging. So you got the figure there in the big window. You got a Netflix call out. You've got the Netflix He-Man logo down there on the bottom. 40th anniversary call out. And then we've got some artwork on the spine and a larger shot of Skeletor on the back with a bio for this version of Skeletor, as well as a cross sell for the rest of this wave. So let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Skeletor from He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the Netflix CGI show. So of course the counterpart to the He-Man in the same line for Masterverse. And this is just like He-Man. This is a really weird figure. It's very different. It's certainly its own thing. Very odd compared to any other Masterverse figure. But still, just like He-Man, a really faithful interpretation of this particular show's Skeletor in the Masterverse line. I do think there's definitely some issues with this figure in comparison to He-Man, and it really just comes down to his design kind of locks him down a little bit more, but he's still a pretty cool figure. So let's see what he can do, see how he moves around. The first thing, and really the big thing with this guy, is the head. He has a humongous cowl that sits over top of him, and it's all part of this shoulder armor, chest armor apparatus, so his head can't do a whole lot. He can look side to side, and you kind of got to work at it. He can look side to side, but he can only look up, which really doesn't help him all that much. So he can look up really well, but he's looking right into that sort of ragged hood. He can't look down. So if there's one area on this figure that I think is a problem, it's that, especially in comparison to He-Man. But it really just comes down to the fact that he's got this big thing sitting on him. You've got arms that go out at the shoulders. They, of course, are going to rotate all the way around, and you've got more shoulder armor to work with here, but they go all the way out and they go backwards. You've got your bicep swivel up there. We've got, again, double jointed elbows. Pretty good range, though. They have a little bit better range, I think, than He-Man's does. You've got a forearm swivel here. You've got your wrist hinge and rotation also. And then similar to He-Man's at the torso, it's actually relatively functional this time, so he goes backwards. He goes forwards more than He-Man does, and this is just because of the armor setup on this figure versus He-Man. And then you've got your tilt at the side, and then of course you've still got a waist twist down there also. Legs out pretty much all the way. Good range there. They kick forward about this far. They're going to kick backwards slightly. You got your thigh twist up there. We've got double jointed knees that go back a pretty good bit, but he's got these big boot cuffs, so they're going to kind of get in the way. The range is there, but this just sort of stops it from happening all the way. You got a boot cut, and then we've got rocker. Pretty good rocker, not as good as He-Man's, but pretty good. And then, well, maybe as good. And then you got really good hinges down here at those ankles. So, in many ways, he's just as good as He-Man when it comes to articulation. Obviously they're very similar figures. There's not a whole lot that's different about them in terms of construction. The big thing is that he's got this big thing plopped down on his head, and it's just going to get in the way. There's really no way around that with this kind of construction. It's a big hunk of plastic that's just sort of locking down his head. Otherwise, for a big bulky figure, I still think he moves really well. But of course, visuals is where it's at. Now let's not even kid ourselves. Visuals is where it's at with both Skeletor and He-Man when it comes to this line and this interpretation. Because I said it 100 times with He-Man. He's a weird figure, and Skeletor is exactly the same, but in a very different direction. I mean, this Skeletor is treated like a transformation, so he's very much a different type of Skeletor, and he gets the big, upper body, he gets the big burly arms with the relatively normal legs, but he gets this wild color scheme, and I know it's still very Skeletor, yellow skull face, you've got a yellow exposed bone arm, which I really like. You've still got the sort of baby blue skin tones and tons of various shades of purple. But I love this version of Skeletor. I think he's awesome. The design is really cool. You know, I'm still not 100% sold on the whole super top heavy aspect of these designs. Like, it's not the greatest thing in the world to me. But the overall look for this Skeletor, I think is just rad. It's really, really weird. And again, weird in a good way. Weird can be great, weird can be bad, but I think it's really, really great here, just how weird this thing is. I love this, like, you know, almost like lava style of you know, torso and throat that he's got here, with this sort of river of havoc rolling down his body. You've got the big gaudy armor piece, which of course, in conjunction with the cowl, does get in the way of some articulation. But it's cool, it looks good, and it's got this like metallic tinge to it. So you've got this sort of metallic dark purple, metallic or like fuchsia, almost like fuchsia color there. And then you've got, of course, you know, these sort of havoc yellow green color that's in the skull, and then the belt buckle down here too. We do get some monster feet. This is probably the one area where I think the paint is a little bit lacking. It's not that it's not there, it's just that it's kind of cakey. But you've got the weird 3 claws down there with the just as weird, very like, you know, classic Havoc staff looking armor for the boots. Like this stuff evokes like classic Havoc staff to me when it comes to some of the armor accents, the rings of purple, basically, things like that. It kind of looks like the ram skull on the older staff. But I think he looks great. Really wild looking figure, crazy detail, lots of musculature, tons of size. Weird looking dude with a very yellow skull face, and he's kind of got that gaunt look to him, so somehow this skull is very gaunt, so he's kind of like cinched in at the mouth. But you've got like the almost voids around the cheeks, and then you've got those little red eyes just sort of peeking through at you, and the contrasting colors from that purple to the yellow really makes it stand out, very much in conjunction to He-Man, because He-Man is, I mean, He-Man's a weird figure, but he's not nearly as crazy looking as this version of Skeletor. This is like, you know, 90s highlighters just exploded all over Skeletor, and I think it looks really cool, very different, just an awesome, weird, different take on Skeletor that surprisingly, and I can't stress this enough when it comes to these figures, surprisingly has translated into figure form really, really well. And then, of course, for some size comparisons, here we go with the most recent Skeletor from Masterverse, so our new Eternia. And then we've got a Mythic Legions figure over here for, you know, another 7-inch scale figure. So just like He-Man, you can see, you know, if you caught that review, I kind of mentioned that these figures are big figures, but they are not super tall. So Masterverse is like a 7-inch scale. These guys they're kind of that, but they're also sort of their own thing. So they're not necessarily as tall as their normal figure counterparts. This Skeletor is a little bit taller just because of the fact he's got like the peak of that cowl that sticks out. But he's not really much taller than the Masterverse, and he's a little bit taller than a Mythic Legion. And then let's pull these guys aside, and, you know, here's the Mezco Conan, just because I used him with He-Man also. And then let's move Skeletor aside, and let's do a NECA figure. Here's something a little bit different. Here is the Archie Comics Slash. So a bigger, beefier turtle, but still a smaller size figure. And then let's do one more. Something a little bit smaller, a little bit different, especially compared to Skeletor. Here is a Figuarts Goku that's the full power Goku from, of course, Tamashii Nation. So you can get an idea of what he looks like with other figures, and it really just comes down to bulk. He's a big, bulky figure. Big monster arms, big barrel chest, just overall a lot of size, not necessarily height, but a lot of size, a lot of shelf presence. Now, as far as accessories goes, Skeletor is kind of, you know, just like many other ways in this release, he's very much just like He-Man. So we get some extra hands to start with. You know, he's got the gripping hands on him in the box. You get a set of fists. Of course, you get one skeleton hand. You get one flesh hand. So they're very different. And then we get the Havoc staff, which I think is really cool. I like the design. I like the colors. I like the size. It is, however, a little big, like in the sense that it's kind of heavy and in many ways very unwieldy. Thankfully, you know, we've still got the little notch system thing going on in the hands, so it does help to stabilize him a little bit. But it's still heavy. You know, it's definitely bigger and heavier and more disproportionately sized than the Power Sword, so there's a lot of weight up top. Now, they did do what they could in some ways to kind of make it work. You know, it's got a little hollow stuff going on up top. You've got a little bit of hollow plastic down here on the bottom. Not much, but a little bit just to kind of shave off a little bit of weight. But I think the overall sculpt is good. I mean, it obviously goes with this figure. It very much lines up with the emblem on his chest, the sort of electric yellow paint accents that he's got, and the green on the eyes kind of go with the color scheme for Skeletor himself. So it's a really cool accessory, and it definitely fits in with the figure. It's just kind of big, so you're going to have to pose him accordingly. And then it does have this real metal chain that hangs off the top, and basically you can just sort of like drape it over Skeletor's arm, just like this, to have it look like it's actually, you know, cinched on him. So it's a pretty cool accessory. You know, it's really big. It's definitely gaudy, and it's going to stand out. It is slightly unwieldy. It's certainly more unwieldy than the power sword on He-Man's side, you know, as far as the counterpoint goes. But it's still a really cool accessory, and very much a solid interpretation of this version of the staff. So yeah, overall, really happy with this guy. Just like I'm really happy with He-Man. Again, it's a lot of surprise with these two. I was really worried about them, honestly. I was worried that I was going to be getting this weird, non-functional brick of a figure. And, you know, I have to be honest, of course, they are limited in some things because of their design. They are weird still. But these do a lot more than I ever expected them to. It's really surprising that they work so well. It's crazy to me that they work so well when so many Masterverse figures haven't exactly hit the mark. They really knocked these two out of the park. Skeletor's only real downside is the head. It's just locked down, and I know why, and I understand it. It doesn't make it any better, but I understand it. Otherwise, though, I think he's awesome. He looks fantastic. He has just a great design, great shelf presence. He comes with a few solid accessories. The staff is really nice. It is really heavy, but it is really nice. And overall, it's just cool to have these two guys in more robust figure form. So that's going to do it for this look at the Masters of the Universe Masterverse Netflix CGI Skeletor. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.